Last week, Mito had the worst day ever, and ended up falling off of a bridge and plummeting toward her death. Fortunately, she was rescued by the vampire Ruka, and now she has agreed to become his thrall. Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we are talking about Vampire Dormitory Episode 2. We've got lots to discuss, so grab a hot beverage, get comfy, and let's get started. In today's episode, we seem to have a theme that everybody has a secret. And we're going to talk about each and every one. We're going to speculate on some of the things that are not absolutely confirmed. And we are going to dig into some of the things that we have actually found out, because we got a lot of interesting information. But I will admit we got just as many questions as we did answers. Let's start with what we found out at the end of episode 1, which is the reality that Mito is absolutely and confirmed to be a girl. That is going to be really crucial because I think that we aren't actually getting the full picture of why it's so important that Ruka drink or not drink from girls. I don't think that what we're going to be talking about later on with him and his otaku obsession is the full extent of the consequences of what's happening. And when we get there, I'll tell you why. But bringing it back to Mito and her situation, I think it's really interesting to see the stuff that is happening to her character and the stuff that is happening as she starts attending the school, starts working at the cafe, starts getting to know people and all that. Because what this means for Mito as a character is that the more that she does and the more that she gets engaged into this world and with all of these people, the more that she actually loses the one advantage that somebody has when they have absolutely nothing. And that is that when you get down to nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose. And the more that she keeps holding on to this secret and yet getting attached to these people, the harder it's going to be to actually keep up appearances as her alter ego, and the more she's likely going to feel guilt and remorse and be uncomfortable doing that. I also think that it's worth noting that there may actually be a couple characters who might be on to her in one way or another. I think that Komori actually has some clue of something that's going on here. I think that Len might actually have some kind of gut instinct that something is happening. And we definitely are going to be talking about Juri and the way that he confronts Mito later on in this discussion. But before we do that, let's talk about Ruka a little bit, because our man has a couple weird things going on here, and I want to get to the bottom of these. First up, we find out in this episode that Ruka is actually like a closeted otaku who is obsessed with some kind of 2D magical girl anime. I thought that that was really fun and cute. I'm glad that we're seeing something more whimsical and lighthearted from this anime than what we got in the last episode, because the last episode was so damn dark. But at the same time, while I actually believe that Ruka maybe enjoys this anime and has fun and everything, he certainly seems passionate. And he doesn't necessarily strike me as the kind of guy who's gonna make up something quite this niche if he was trying to just cover his tracks. I also think that it's very likely there is way more to what's going on with the drinking from girls versus drinking from boys thing. And the reason that I feel that way is that when we were talking about this in the last episode, we actually saw Komori actually come in and interfere. And again in this episode, we see that as soon as Mito is trying to actually have a real conversation with Ruka about the fact that he talks about wanting to drink from boys and not girls, Komori actually comes in and blocks that conversation by starting to show off all of the anime stuff, which is, for some reason, hidden behind a light switch, maybe because of the whole closeted otaku aspect, or maybe because it is actually a front for this, and maybe these two have done this before. I'm not sure. But there's definitely, at least in my gut, something else going on that we are not hearing, and I hope that we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. While we're on the subject of Komori, let's actually put the spotlight on this man for a minute, because I wanted to talk about him in the last episode, but I'm so bad with names and I was so far behind that I didn't get the chance. But we've got time now, don't we? So, here's the thing. What I want to know about this man is, why is it that he is so worried about Ruka taking his place? Not in a sense that Ruka is or isn't worthy of doing this, but rather, why is it necessary for Ruka to take his place? I actually think I kind of have a theory. what I think may be going on here, given that we are seeing Komori, but we're not seeing any kind of life mate or partner with him, is maybe there is some kind of rule in the vampire culture where the leader needs to have a mate in order for them to continue leading. I don't know whether this is merely going to be some kind of structure within their culture and hierarchy for leadership, or whether perhaps something tragic has happened to Komori's partner and they died, or they betrayed him, or they went missing, or any number of other things, and maybe that somehow affects either his ability to lead, or even more direly, maybe it actually is like affecting either his ability to stay alive, or more tragically, his will to live. Because in vampire lore and fiction, when a vampire takes a mate in many stories that involve this trope, if the mate is lost, really, really bad things happen. So it very well could be that we see Komori and his situation and everything, and he could very well, in some very real sense, be running out of time. I'm not certain of that, of course. This is just me making some guesses, and we'll see what happens as the story continues, but the man is a mystery, and I am genuinely intrigued. Next, we'll jump to somebody who is at least potentially a bit more human, and that's going to be Juri, who I thought was really interesting. I really liked his overall intro, where he was actually confronting Mito and asking about her secret and trying to figure out what's going on. I think it's really interesting how perceptive that he actually is. And it's interesting as well because it's not just about her. He also seems to be aware that there is something up with Len and with Ruka. So it'll be interesting to see just exactly whether there is a specific reason that he is so insightful, or whether it's just a knack or a hunch or some kind of luck. Another thing that I noticed as we were listening to him speak, especially once the situation got a bit more clear between those two and they actually were more friendly, is that it seems like Juri actually has some kind of secret of his own. And it seems like there are two things to that. There is something that's going on, and he was potentially going to talk to Mito about it. But also, there must be some reason that he does not seem to want Takara to know about it, because the moment that Takara showed up, Juri shut up. So there's something going on there, and hopefully we'll get to see what that is eventually. And of course, we are not going to be forgetting to talk about Len, because he grabbed my interest so fast at the end of last episode that he's the reason I've been counting down the days to be able to actually watch this and then be able to discuss it with all of you. And he absolutely did not disappoint. He has massive, like, underlying strength and mystery energy going on that I thought was really cool. I really think it's interesting seeing his capacities as a fighter. I also think that we are definitely seeing another character who has something otherworldly or supernatural of some form going on. And when it comes to him and to that aspect, I have so many questions. Why does he know Ruka is a vampire? Where does his own strength come from? Is he a human or something else? And if he is something else, was he born as that something else, or did something happen to him to change him? Why does he know the rules about what it means to become a vampire? Or does he? Could he be misleading us? That is a possibility. Why is he so focused on protecting Mito? They don't know each other, they don't have any history that I'm aware of, and yet he seems adamant and determined to do this. Why does he hate Ruka? What history do they have? That's something that I hope we're going to get to the bottom of. And the other thing we have to ask, of course, is why is he so instantly drawn to Mito? Now, I mean, this is a shoujo romance, and it's pretty obvious that these two boys are going to be rivals for our leading lady. In last week's episode, I actually showed an image from the credits where we actually see them as if they are option A and option B. I got bad news for Len because in a storytelling sense, he does not get the benefit of what I call the first boy rule, which generally means that whichever guy a girl is shown with first in romantic fiction is usually, not always, but usually the guy she's going to end up with. So he might be totally SOL and be like our Jacob of the series, but we'll see what goes down and whether anyone actually gets with anyone, or whether anyone's even going to want to be around Mito when the truth of who she actually is comes out. Last up, but super duper important, is what are this world's rules about making a vampire? because apparently either Ruka is keeping a secret from Mito that could change her life forever, or Len doesn't know what he's talking about and is for some reason trying to get Mito to stay away from Ruka. I'm not sure which of these it'll end up being, but those seem like the two most likely options. But let's pretend for a moment that we know for certain that if Ruka continues to drink Mito's blood, that she is going to change. I have a couple questions. Given how adamantly she stated to Len that Ruka is the person she likes, that Ruka is the only person who's ever cared for her, and that Ruka is somebody that matters to her, and that she doesn't care if he is a monster, she likes him either way, why would it necessarily matter to her whether she turned into a vampire or not? Why isn't she more upset about the fact that Ruka hasn't explained these things to her? Because this could have really permanent life consequences for her, and yet she doesn't seem at all fazed that he hasn't said anything. Are there any kinds of rules or limitations based off of sex and gender? Can male vampires only turn women or men? Is it both? Is that part of the reason why Ruka is so careful about who he drinks from? Is that possibly more of a real reason? And like, how much does somebody have to be drank from in order to turn? Do they have any say or consent in the matter? And what does it mean in this world to be a vampire? What are the actual rules of vampirism? Because depending on what kind of rules that there are for vampirism, it could either be an incredible blessing or an incredible curse, especially for a character like Mito, who doesn't really have human ties to go back to. It wouldn't necessarily be a problem. The other thing that I found really strange about the interaction between Len and Mito at the end of the episode is her immediate assurance that she isn't going to let Ruka turn her into a vampire. Why is she opposed? Why is she immediately making this promise when she just met someone? Those were just really strange decisions to make and things to say, in my opinion. At any rate, those are all the things that I wanted to talk about as far as what I saw in this week's episode, but now it's your turn. Did you notice anything that you thought was particularly interesting? Did you have a favorite scene? Is there a character that is grabbing your attention and not letting go? We are here to have a discussion, so I would love it if you would take the time to leave a comment and tell me what you're thinking so that we can continue this discussion beyond the scope of this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!